A very good evening. Welcome to State of Business on our television. I'm Ashing Sani Veerasinghe. Let's have a look at the headlines first. Sri Lanka receives another standing ovation, becoming the second best country to travel in 2020. IMF projects minus 4.4% global growth this year and brings positive signals for next year. News in detail. Sri Lanka has been again named one of the best countries in the world to visit this year by a US-based travel publication. The travel publication CN Traveller also named Sri Lankan Airlines among the top airlines to fly. Sri Lanka scored 93.96 points, slightly behind Italy with a score of 94.05. Sri Lanka beat Portugal, Japan and Greece, which made it to the top 5. Sri Lanka was also in the top 5 best countries to visit in the 2019 list and is currently closed for tourists, but authorities have been talking about setting up travel bubbles. Sri Lanka closed the borders for tourists but kept outbound flights open at the height of the crisis in March and April 2020, when many airports also shut down. Both Sri Lankan Airlines and Qatar flew regularly, ferrying out passengers, and was one of the last airlines to remain on air. It then operated rescue flights for both Sri Lankans and foreign nationals. Sri Lankan Airlines was also named the 6th best airline in the world by CN Traveller. International Monetary Fund in its latest World Economic Outlook states that global growth is projected to be minus 4.4% this year, concerning the repercussions of the COVID-19, which is far from over. IMF further emphasizes that growth is projected to be rebound to 5.2% next year, slightly below its June projection.
In our latest World Economic Outlook, we continue to project a deep recession in 2020. Global growth is projected to be minus 4.4%, which is a small upgrade from June. This upgrade owes to somewhat less dire outcomes in the second quarter, as well as signs of a stronger recovery in the third quarter, offset partially by downgrades in some emerging and developing economies. In 2021, growth is projected to rebound to 5.2%, slightly below our June projection. Now, except for China, where output is expected to exceed 2019 levels this year, output in both advanced economies and emerging and developing economies are projected to stay below 2019 levels well into 2021. Now, after the rebound in growth in 2021, global growth is expected to gradually slow to about 3.5% in the medium term, which means that over the medium term, we have a projection of a permanent loss in output pretty much everywhere in the world. The cumulative loss in output, for instance, relative to the pre-pandemic projected path, will grow from 11 trillion over this year and next to 28 trillion by end 2025.
Nevertheless, bringing forward the measures to be done to ensure a sustained recovery, International Monetary Fund is confident that if medical solutions can be made available faster, it could lead to a cumulative increase in global income of almost $9 trillion by end of 2025, benefiting all economies.
However, there is still much that needs to be done to ensure a sustained recovery. First, greater international collaboration is needed to end this health crisis. Tremendous progress is being made in developing tests, treatments, and vaccines, but only if countries work closely together will there be enough production and widespread distribution to every part of the world to end this pandemic. Now, we estimate that if medical solutions can be made available faster and more widely relative to our current baseline, it could lead to a cumulative increase in global income of almost $9 trillion by end 2025, benefiting all economies and reducing divergence. Second, to the extent possible, policies must focus aggressively on limiting persistent economic damage from this crisis. Governments should continue to provide income support to households and work to preventing rising bankruptcies and job destruction through supporting vulnerable but viable firms. Now, over time, as the recovery strengthens, policies should shift to facilitating a reallocation of resources towards sectors that are growing, like e-commerce, away from sectors that are shrinking. A public green infrastructure investment push in times of low interest rates and high uncertainty can significantly increase jobs and accelerate the recovery.
Stay tuned for more news after this short break. Welcome back after the break. Head of the National Operations Centre for Prevention of COVID-19 Outbreak and Army Commander Lieutenant General Shavindra Silva requests the public to record the details of the public transportation by taking down its vehicle number, since it assists the health authorities to fast-track the contact tracing procedure of any COVID-19 contracted patient. Head of the National Operations Centre for Prevention of COVID-19 Outbreak and Army Commander Lieutenant General Shavindra Silva requests all those who are boarded at boarding places to inform their heads of the working places about the details about their boarding mates, since it would facilitate in future contact tracing activities. Army Commander Lieutenant General Shavindra Silva also added that it would be highly helpful for the health authorities if the public who use public transportation make records of the public vehicles by taking down their vehicle numbers. On the other hand, police media spokesman DIG Ajit Rohana stated that a decision regarding the opening of food and drug stores in the curfew areas will be taken tomorrow. The DIG also said that 11 persons have been arrested for violating the curfew in the last 24 hours, and accordingly, 135 persons have been arrested for violating the curfew since last Sunday. However, these curfew-related restrictions do not apply to GCE A-level students. In the meantime, the total tally of COVID-19 cases in Sri Lanka surpassed the 5,000 mark yesterday, with the identification of 194 cases. Moreover, the overall number of COVID-19 cases detected from the Deula-Pitia COVID-19 cluster has surpassed 1,600 mark, as 17 more cases were detected at about 2 p.m. today. On a positive note, 3,357 persons who have contracted the virus have been discharged after a full recovery, including the 29 who were discharged early today. On the other hand, Health Promotion Bureau states that 6,566 PCR tests have been conducted in the country yesterday. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has appointed a task force to examine the utilization of geological resources for key development activities and to meet the requirements of the dependence of such resources for small-scale livelihood activities. Accordingly, Public Services, Provincial Councils and Local Government Ministries Secretary J.J. Ratnasiri will chair the 18th member task force. The task force will identify development priorities utilizing geological resources like metals, sand and earth as main raw materials, and assess the quantities of supply required on a yearly basis and delineate areas throughout the island where such resources are available. This will be executed paying attention to the environmental conservation in the areas. In the meantime, the task force will also review the existing legal provisions on mining and transportation of raw materials needed for basic construction and the existing methodology of issuing of licenses for exploitation of such resources. The members of the task force are entrusted to revisit the dated rules and regulations, institutional and administrative structures, and make proposals for reforms. Thereby, the task force is required to report to the Secretary to the President within 45 days in relation to the places and methodologies that could be prioritized in the completion of this task. Senior consultant of the National Institute of Mental Health, Dr. Pushpa Ranasinghe, says that Sri Lanka's rank in committing suicide is 31 and that it is a satisfactory achievement when compared to the situation in 1995 with the label of a country which reported world's highest commit suicides. Psychiatrists at the National Institute of Mental Health also warns that there are possibilities to change this satisfactory result to a worse situation with the COVID-19 pandemic in the country. National Institute of Mental Health, which introduced the 1926 hotline in 2018 to assist the individuals who are seeking help to cope with anxiety, depression, stress and other mental health concerns, reached another milestone last week. Accordingly, the NIMH introduced text-based helpline for those who face emotional and mental distress as assisted by Airtel Sri Lanka. The service is free for Airtel customers and is also accessible via other mobile networks. Accordingly, a user only has to send a simple text message to 1926 and it will be responded immediately by a mental health specialist from NIMH.
We are in a good position when compared to the past. In 1995, we became first in the world in suicide. But now our position is 31. Okay, so in 1995, we lost 8,000 due to suicides, and now only about 3,000. Last year, we have 3,125. But it's going to get increased with this COVID situation that as WHO predicted. And what we have to do, thinking about not only in mental health perspective, and we have to nurture empathy. We have to understand each other. And we have to increase their self-esteem. That it's not the people who are committing suicide, and they are not abnormal people. They are just like you and me. At time of stress, they don't know how to deal with it. And that's the biggest problem.
We'll be back with stock updates after this short break. Welcome back after the break. The trading at Colombo Stock Exchange ended on a positive note today. The all-share price index gained 87.16 points to close at 5,890.13 and the S&P SL20 gained 43.02 points to close at 2,346.83. The turnover was 5.5 billion rupees and over 465 million shares were traded. Up next are forex rates. With that, we are wrapping up today's news. See you tomorrow with State of Business at the usual time. Until then, take care. Good night.